You came to hear about seals, and in particular Scottish harbour seals I'm going to talk about. And I'd just like to take a few minutes to tell you some of the work that we're doing in relation to harbour seals, where they are and how we know where they are, where they're going, because you generally just see seals when they're hauled out or when they're their heads are just above the water at the coast, but they don't spend all their time there. So we need to know where they're going, and we also need to know what they're doing when they're going to where they're going. Right. We actually have two species of seals in Scotland. We've got the grey seals and we've got the harbour seals, or common seal. The grey seals are the most numerous, and we have, I'm sure you all know, a very large breeding colony on the Isle of May. In total, we have about 130,000 grey seals in Scotland, which is about 35 to 40% of the world's population of grey seals. So we have a very large responsibility globally for the grey seals. With the harbour seals are actually pan-global. They occur all around the entire coastlines of the world. And Scotland is certainly a stronghold for harbour seals in Europe. But we have been seeing some very strange things happening to the harbour seal populations in Scotland. In some places, we are seeing the numbers increase, but in other places, we're seeing numbers dramatically decline, and that's of great concern. And no greater decline has happened than in the Firth of Tay, just up the road from here, where 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we had about 900 harbour seals in the Tay. We now have less than 50, and we don't know why. There's other places which I'll mention as I go along where we're seeing similar massive declines. How do we know that we're having these declines? We go and count them. Harbour seals are distributed all around the coast of Scotland. They're very difficult to count because they tend to live largely on rocky coastlines. Some haul out in estuaries on sandy shores, but the majority of them live on rocky coastlines, and they're very difficult to see. So the Sea Mammal Research Unit, which is based over at St Andrews University, carries out surveys of the coastline of Scotland. There's 18,500 kilometres of coastline in Scotland, so it's not the sort of place that you can just go for a quick walk and count them. So they use a helicopter, and to be able to count them, they go out in the summer when the seals are molting, so they're changing their pelage, because they're growing new hair, lots of blood is going to the surface of the animals. So if you use an infrared camera, they glow. So you don't actually have to see the seals by the naked eye. If you take an infrared photograph, you can actually see them as little hot spots. And this was the old-fashioned infrared camera that the Sea Mammal Research Unit used, which was a real brute of a thing. Helicopter sort of flew along at an angle. It was so heavy and big. But they now have a new super-duper, very high-resolution camera that takes both normal photographs and infrared photographs simultaneously. And the helicopter, which is there, flies around the entire coastline of Scotland following a track and taking photographs of the whole coastline as it goes. And this is just an example here of the normal light photograph and the infrared photograph. That's the easy part. That's the fun part. You've then got to take all these photographs and count the seals. So, how many seals can you see on that photo? That's a normal photo. That's actually the barrel of butter in the middle of Scapa Flow in Orkney. And I'm sure that at the front you can probably see a few. That's the seals. Yeah? So, the infrared works. You can see them. And to the trained eye, to the guys that really do this all the time, they can't tell the sex of the seals because harbour seals don't really change. The males and females aren't really that much difference in size compared to grey seals, but they are able to distinguish young seals by looking at these photos. But that's how the counts are done. And then over a period of time, we were able to compile maps showing the distribution of the seals. To fly the entire coastline of Scotland takes 4 years on average, because we only survey in a window of 3 weeks in the year, when low tide is between 10 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it isn't raining, which kind of restricts your window of opportunity in Scotland, even in the summer. So it takes them 4 years on average to do a complete survey of the whole of Scotland. And this is a map from the latest set of surveys between 2011 and 2016. And you can see that the west coast of Scotland at the moment is the really important area for harbour seals. Shetland still has a fair number. Orkney, and I'll show you more about Orkney shortly, numbers are way down. And then the Firth of Tay, there's just a couple of little dots there. A few more in the Forth, and quite a few in the Moray Firth. But this takes a lot of effort, a lot of time to compile. But it's important. And what it tells us is the minimum number of seals, because unfortunately we haven't worked out a way yet of organising the seals all to be hauled out at the same time on the day that we're surveying an area. So this is a minimum number. And the minimum number of seals within Scotland, the minimum number of harbour seals within Scotland is estimated at the moment to be around 30,000. There's about 35,000 in the whole of the UK. The rest of them, the bulk of the rest of them are in the Wash on the east coast of England. So this is just to show you what's been happening in various parts of the country over the last 20 years. The Western Isles, or the west coast of Scotland, there's been a steady increase, really, a bit of a blip, but basically the line is going up. The dramatic declines are Orkney, where in 1996 there was about 9,000 harbour seals. We're now down to just over 1,000. So about an 85% decline in the number of harbour seals in Orkney. The other big declines are in Shetland, where the numbers have gone down, although the map showed that there was still quite a lot. And although it doesn't really show up very well on this scale, the east coast of Scotland has also declined dramatically from about 1,000 down to very low numbers. So this is causing us great concern. We don't know why this is happening. So this is just to show you what's happened in Orkney. The light red circles are the numbers in 1997. So the large numbers of seals, over 500 seals were hauled out in these sorts of areas. We're now down at about 25 seals in these places. There's some places where they've disappeared entirely. Sanday in the north of Orkney is a special area of conservation for its seal population. That was because At one time, there was over 2,000 harbour seals on Sandy. There's now about 120. These are very dramatic declines, and we don't know what's causing it. They maybe have gone somewhere else. Seals are quite able to get up and go somewhere else. And that was one of the ideas that we had. That was maybe because the numbers on the west coast have seemed to be going up, maybe all the seals from Orkney have gone to the west coast or to the Western Isles. But we have evidence that that's not the case, because what we can do is we can attach mobile phones to seals and get them to phone home. I'll pass round a couple of these. These are dead ones. They sort of they fell off seals a while ago. The one with the short mast is the sort of thing that would be put on a harbour seal or a grey seal. The rather larger one with a very long mast is actually one that came off an elephant seal. It wasn't tagged in Scotland, I hasten to add, but Smeru tag elephant seals in Antarctica as well. But it's just to give you an idea of what they look like. So these tags basically are modified mobile phones with a lot of other electronic sort of gizmo inside them. And it tells us quite a lot about where the seals are going, what they're doing. And basically, within the whole system, there's a wet-dry switch. So when the seal hauls out and the switch dries out on the phone, it phones home, either to a mobile phone mast, or some of them are linked up to satellites as well. And this is just a couple of seals that have been rigged up with the Apple i10s, you know. Each of these cost about £3,000. So they're not cheap. And unfortunately, when the seal molts next, it falls off. And it usually falls off at sea, so they're lost. We do find a few lying around, but these are disposable mobile phones. The seals don't seem to bother, it doesn't seem to bother them. They're stuck on by super glue, and they stay there until, as I say, the seals molt. These are a slightly different one. These are ones that speak to base stations, which are located at the coast. A lot of these have been put on up in the Pentland Firth, where there's a lot of work going on at the moment. But they do the same sort of thing. They connect to these base stations that have been placed along the coast to tell us, to give us the information that these seals are recording. And this is just an animation of a number of seals. All these different dots, the different colours, are different seals and where they're going in the Pentland Firth. They're not quite going that fast. There's a clock up at the very top there, and you can see it's spooling through rather quickly. But if I played this in real time, you'd be here till Christmas. But you can see that we're getting a lot of information about where the seals are going, what they're doing. They tend to come back to where they left from. And you can see that the seals that have been tagged there was 12 seals that were tagged there. They're all more or less contained within a relatively small area, which is beginning to tell us that maybe the seals from Orkney haven't gone to the west coast. They're staying in a general area, which, you know, leaves us still with the problem, where have all the seals gone? And that's the sort of final picture that you get. On the right here, you've got the different tracks, the different colours, different animals. And on the left, just the download of individual animals, what they're doing. So we've got a couple here which are really not very adventurous. They've really just stayed around Gills Bay on the north coast of Scotland. This one decided to go to Shetland. It then decided it didn't really like Shetland, and it came back. You know, make no comment. This one on the bottom here decided it was going to go up the west coast of Orkney into Scapa Flow, kicked around there for a while, went out here feeding quite a few times, and then came back as well. So we're getting a picture of what the animals are doing. What we're finding is individual seals have a favourite place to go to forage. They're going out, they're coming back, they're going out, they're coming back. So they know where they can catch fish. You know, but each animal is slightly different in what it does. We can also get an awful lot of other information by programming these mobile phones. We can find out how deep the animals are diving. So this at the top here is telling us that this particular animal was diving to about 150 meters depth on quite a regular basis, between 100 and 150 meters to feed. It also can tell us things like temperature. So this is actually a chart of the temperature, and over a couple of weeks, 3 weeks at the end of March, beginning of April, we begin to see the seawater warming up. Now again, you know, if we wanted that sort of information, we'd have to put out so many more sophisticated bits of kit, most of which would probably get lost. You know, but if we can instrument the animals to do all that work for us, it's a fantastic resource to get all sorts of important information. So we now know a lot more about where the seals are going. We know where they're going, how deep they're going, what they're doing, and the environment that they are living in. This is just another map from Skye, where some seals were also tagged. And again, you can see that individuals have a very discrete area of sort of hunting area. It's also important to know what they're eating, because if we don't know what they're eating, that might be one of the other reasons why numbers of seals are going down, if the fish aren't there in the sea for them to eat. And this very happy looking young lady here is picking up seal poo. It's called scat. And this is how we find out what seals have eaten. We don't know which seal has eaten it, but we know that it's seal poo. And what's done is it's collected, it's taken back to the lab, it's then put in a muslin bag, and it's put in a washing machine, and it's washed through. And what you end up with in the muslin bag is the ear bones, the otoliths from all the fish, and the beaks from cephalopods, from squid and lobster. And you can identify, just like with pollen, you can identify what plants have been growing somewhere by looking at the pollen in the soil. You can identify different species of fish from the size and the shape of the otoliths, the ear bones of the fish. And if you look then at the numbers of the different otoliths within the seal poo, you can start working out what fish the seals are eating. And this has been a huge study. I've just put up a couple of the tables here, but this has been done for the whole of Scotland, and it's actually been done for both harbour seals and grey seals. And what we see is that different species, in different areas, the seals are actually, I mean, they're eating the same variety of fish by and large, but in different proportions. So in Orkney, a cod supper is a really favourite sort of a meal, along with, you know, a little sort of soupçon of sand eel. In the southeast of Scotland, where we are, cod is virtually non-existent in the diet. Sand eels are still quite important, but a lot of flatfish being eaten by seals in this area. Virtually no flatfish, really, in comparison, being eaten in the Orkney animals. what this is telling us is, in a sense, is different places, different diets. I would have expected, if diet had really been a factor in the decline of seals in somewhere like Orkney, that we would not have seen huge amounts of sand eels. Sand eels are, just like as with the birds, they know that they are really energy rich. So, they are getting lots of sand eels. So, the conclusion from this big study is that diet isn't really a factor. The animals are not starving. So, to conclude, what we now have is a map which, based on all the tagging information that we've gathered, we can now create a map which shows the important places for seals when they're at sea. We always knew where the important places were for them when they were hauled out, because we could go and count them and see them. But when they're at sea, they're terribly difficult to see, and spend a lot of their time under the water. But from all the tagging information that we've gathered, we're now able to identify the real important areas at sea. So when it comes to identifying protected areas for seals, we not only can identify the places where they haul out on land when they're vulnerable, they need to be protected, but that's only part of the story, part of the challenge. We also need to protect them while they're at sea, and particularly if we can identify hotspots where lots of seals are going to feed. We can't aspire to protecting the whole of the area that the harbour seals in this case are going to, but some of these real hotspots are potentially places where we can put in place management measures to protect them better. Thank you.